On this Tuesday night, BC catches a break. The reprieve allowing some evacuees to return home as others wait anxiously.
Just looks like a nuclear bomb went off.
A lingering uncertainty, the push for fire-smart homes as military reinforcements arrive in the Northwest Territories. Solving Canada's housing affordability crisis.
We have to build them faster.
The feasibility of the ideas being floated. China's once booming economy in trouble.
They're in a heap of trouble.
What's going wrong and the ripple effects for Canada. And high drama, the race to rescue people trapped in this dangling cable car.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There is a bit of a break in the weather in British Columbia's fire zone. Some much needed rain fell today in the Okanagan. It's not enough to put out the multiple wildfires, but it is helping keep them from getting worse. Nearly 200 structures, many of them homes, have already been lost in BC's central Okanagan. Today, BC's Premier and the Federal Emergency Preparedness Minister toured the region, seeing the destruction for themselves and meeting those forced from their homes.
This is an incredibly fluid, dynamic, and dangerous situation. The emergency response teams are doing the best they can in very challenging circumstances. And my best advice to everybody is to listen to those emergency frontline responders.
We have complete coverage from some of the hardest hit regions tonight. Neetu Garcha and Alyssa Carpenter are in the BC interior. Jeff Semple is in the Northwest Territories, where a fire is moving dangerously close to Hay River. We begin in BC, where the wildfire situation can change in an instant. Of the 380 wildfires burning there now, 14 are considered to be of note. That means they're either highly visible or pose a threat to a community. One of those is the McDougall Creek fire, now estimated to be 120 square kilometers in size. It's been burning for a week on both sides of Okanagan Lake. It's already destroyed dozens of homes in West Kelowna. That's where Neetu Garcha is. Neetu, a bit of a respite in the weather in the Okanagan today. Has that helped?
That's right, Donna. Officials say it has helped. They say with the help of some lighter winds, cooler temperatures and rain, they feel they're turning a corner in the firefight here. And there is more help on the way. Hundreds of firefighters from Mexico and South Africa are set to arrive soon. But this roadblock behind me leads to one of the areas still under evacuations. And it is still a very anxious time for the hundreds here who are still out of their homes.
Oh, that's because we've been eating them. Yeah.
The Freers are into their 5th day of being out of their Kelowna home.
Yeah, I have lots.
The family of 5, plus a cat and a dog, is living with friends, unsure how long before they can go back home or if the flames are still a threat like they were on Thursday when they fled.
Yeah, definitely a sense of panic up and around those places. And everybody says they kind of think it could happen one day, but nobody's really ready, feels like. I was definitely not ready. I have 2 sets of clothes.
They say security and cell phone footage from some workers briefly allowed back Saturday helped confirm their home in the Wilden neighborhood is okay for now.
My neighbors were all sharing screenshots of our doorbells and security cameras. I've been glued to my phone just watching.
Like them, evacuee Sean Talbot says the fire moved so fast they were sure their homes wouldn't survive.
In that time when the fire was coming, we were literally watching the flames approaching your doorstep, that mountain. And you could kind of judge by the trajectory and the speed that, I wasn't going to have a house by morning.
Officials estimate about 60 structures in the Kelowna area have been lost. The cause of these fires has not been determined, but with climate change bringing more communities under wildfire threat, some are pushing for improved building standards for homes. As a former firefighter who works in construction, Freer hopes this year's events will further that conversation.
Construction methods, if a house is complete, then it's less likely to burn, and you kind of have more control over that. It's not just a pile of kindling sitting there. I can remember 20 years ago having the same conversation. A lot of things were done over the last 20 years, but we're going to have this renewed focus on that. And
he says help from community has been the most reliable place for many to seek support.
Like I said, our butt landed in butter, having some friends like this too. So you do see the best of people when these things happen, I guess.
Another major concern here has been the smoke. There have been air quality advisories and special weather statements as the entire central Okanagan region has been blanketed. It is finally starting to lift, and officials noted today that that will open an opportunity for more aircraft to fly and for some people to see their destroyed homes for the first time. Donna?
All right, Neetu Garcha in West Kelowna, BC, thanks. A 2-hour drive north of Kelowna is another major area of concern. Out-of-control fires are still burning around the lake there. Global's Alyssa Carpenter is in Blind Bay, where frustrations are growing. Alyssa.
Yeah, emotions continue to run high. It's been an exhausting number of days around here. People on this side of Shuswap Lake still gathering up supplies to help their neighbors on the other side of the water. And on the other side of the water, more confusion, more frustration. It's really become the community versus the bureaucracy. Another load of supplies being taken by boat across Shuswap Lake, all donated by members of one side of the water, destined for friends and neighbors on the other side of the lake.
Aside from the concrete stuff like food and water and fuel, it's a sense that somebody's got your back.
Melanie Dyer drops off water, food, and N95 masks, even though she too is evacuated and staying in Salmon Arm.
I was 2 kilometers from the orders, so we did get out because it was too scary.
Across the lake in Scotch Creek, Sharon Taves has been trying to have the backs of her entire community. But today, the exhausted food truck owner posted this emotional video to Instagram saying RCMP won't let her leave her home to serve food to her community.
We've now been locked to our houses and have all these supplies and resources sitting here, and we're not able to go anywhere.
Many here starting to feel as though it is the community versus those who are making the rules and enforcing them. Greg Kylo is MLA for Shuswap.
I would certainly think that an individual in the community that wants to provide her food truck and take it there, why would you prohibit or in any way impede the opportunity for Sharon to do what she's doing? She's just feeding her community.
Kylo says he's looking forward to having a few minutes of the Premier's time so he can discuss some of these issues with the Premier. The Premier and a couple of ministers were scheduled to be in this area today to tour it for themselves, but smoke between Kamloops and Salmon Arm kept the Premier's flight from going up.
Okay, Alyssa Carpenter, thank you. From BC's Shuswap, we go to the Northwest Territories. Wildfires there surround much of Great Slave Lake. Some rain north of the lake has helped hold back the fires near Yellowknife over the last few days, but concerns are growing for southern communities, such as Hay River, where strong winds are fanning the flames. The wall of flames moved with frightening speed. Fire crews are now arriving from Saskatchewan and Manitoba to help. Jeff Semple is in Hay River, where people have seen how fast things can get out of control. Jeff.
Donna, this small, smoky town of Hay River is surrounded by fire on 2 sides, with the closest blaze to the south just 1 kilometer away. But reinforcements have arrived.
Last week, the town of Hay River came this close to an inferno.
We're currently evacuating, driving south.
Earlier that day, local officials had received word that a fire was heading in their direction, but was still nearly 100 kilometers away. Then, without warning, that fire arrived.
We lost comms, so we had no idea that the fire was even coming towards us, and it just showed up on our doorstep way earlier than expected.
The local fire chief says the blaze jumped 80 kilometers in just 2 hours.
For a fire to move that fast, have you ever seen anything like that before?
No one has.
With no working cell phones or internet, the mayor scrambled to sound the alarm and evacuate around 6,000 people.
The biggest challenge was obviously comms, right? Not knowing how we're going to warn them.
Some escaped on planes, others by road. The wreckage from charred car crashes still littered along the highway. This is what's left of the neighboring village just 30 minutes away. But incredibly, Hay River escaped unscathed, and no one was killed.
Guess I'm a pretty good flight attendant because I had those planes loaded in no time, so that's how I started out, right? No, it was an exercise. We were tested, and like I said, we're counting our wins and working through it.
They won that battle, but the war rages on, and now they're getting some backup. Around 140 soldiers and military personnel just arrived in Hay River from Quebec, swapping their firearms for fire hoses. Soldiers are not trained to fight flames on the front lines, but they are equipped to assist with containment.
Basically what we do is we search for hot spots, we turn over the soil, try to dig as much as we can, and then helicopters come in, will douse the fire.
For most here, this is their first time fighting fires, but at this rate, it likely won't be their last.
Some of them have back in the province of Quebec, but most of our guys are new to this, so they're gaining experience as we go.
But while the military is helping, the weather is not. There's a small chance of rain this evening, but after that, the forecast calls for warm and dry conditions for at least the next week. Donna?
All right, Jeff Semple in Hay River, Northwest Territories. Thanks. In Prince George, BC, at least 3 people are in hospital after a massive explosion leveled a building in that city's downtown. Police say it happened in an abandoned building around 7 this morning. The explosion destroyed the building, damaged surrounding infrastructure. Police say it's possible people may have been inside at the time. The cause of the explosion is under investigation. There were a tense few hours last night at West Edmonton Mall. The mall was locked down after 3 men were injured in a targeted shooting. It happened just before 8 last night.
We are incredibly lucky that nobody lost their lives yesterday, that no innocent people were injured, and that police were able to respond and now gather evidence. This was a targeted event.
After reviewing security video, police say 4 people who were walking out to the parking lot were approached by a white SUV, and that encounter, they say, resulted in an exchange of gunfire. The SUV involved has been located. Police are searching for those who were inside and a 4th individual who fled the scene. Well, no one disputes Canada has a serious shortage of affordable housing. The argument is about how to create more and who should pay for it. At a retreat of federal cabinet ministers in Charlottetown, the Liberals heard from the authors of a recent report that provides some recommendations. Mackenzie Gray looks at some of the options on the table.
This system is in a crisis.
They're the housing gurus the Liberals hope will change their economic fortunes.
What this rental crisis is causing is bleeding into an ownership crisis.
That squeeze, the focus of the Liberals' cabinet retreat, attempting to fix one of Canada's most acute issues.
We have to build more homes, and we have to build them faster.
Some of the proposals?
Here, over 2,000 houses have already arisen in less than a year.
Harkening back to the housing crisis of the 1940s, when Ottawa built thousands of rentals for returning Second World War veterans.
A lot of the same policy instruments that the federal government used back then, they could use again today.
Approving standardized housing plans and cutting federal taxes on developments, 2 key ideas that Liberals could implement quickly, but without support from the provinces and municipalities, the bigger issues won't be solved.
And the housing crisis in Canada is so acute. Like 2 million units is over $1 trillion of investment. Now, there's no government that's going to have $1 trillion to put into this.
But Canada needs to nearly triple that number to reach affordability by 2030. And to help get there, the new housing minister thinks Cabinet should consider capping the 800,000 student visas granted annually to reduce rental demand. A proposal getting mixed reviews from Cabinet colleagues.
The crunch on housing has not been created by immigration or international students, but adding volume is something we absolutely can't ignore.
The premiers haven't raised a cap on foreign students with me. I talked to the premiers a lot about housing.
Even if the federal government implemented all the measures proposed today, the experts that spoke to Cabinet said it would take 2 to 3 years, Donna, for the impact to be felt in the Canadian housing market.
Okay, Mackenzie Gray in Charlottetown, thanks. China's economy spirals coming up. What's triggering the trouble? There are signs of a significant economic slowdown in China. Once the driver of the world's economy, it is now on shaky ground. There is a debt crisis in its massive property sector. The value of the currency dropped to its lowest level in 16 years last week. China's stocks hit a 9-month low, and unemployment is rising. It's all alarmed major investment banks, which have cut their growth forecasts for China. Eric Sorensen looks at what's going on in the world's second largest economy.
You can't miss China's economic downturn. It stares out from city skylines, massive housing complexes unfinished and unoccupied. the economy is slowing and China has a mountain of debt, from local governments to developers that have overbuilt to consumers with steep mortgages and little incentive to spend as prices fall in a country accustomed to growth. There is no deflation in China. There will be no deflation, says the spokesperson for the Bureau of Statistics. Real estate is in an adjustment phase, he says. Business analysts see it differently.
China has a massive debt problem.
Even dispensing with the usual technical jargon.
They're in a heap of trouble. They're in a heap of economic trouble.
China's overall debt is 282% of its GDP, almost 3 times the country's annual economic output. Household debt alone, mostly mortgages, total more than $5 trillion US. It's hard to get the full picture. The unemployment rate for young people in June climbed to over 21%. At that point, the government stopped reporting the data. China's leader, Xi Jinping, is attending the summit of BRICS nations in South Africa to bolster the economic clout of the global South. But the real test for Xi right now is at home.
There is that pressure on the leadership because President Xi has taken ownership. He is the leader of the economy. Then if something is not going right, then people may point fingers at him.
While Western nations are raising interest rates, China is cutting them to spur consumer spending. A slowdown there could actually help Canada.
To the extent that weaker Chinese demand actually helps slow the Canadian economy, it might be a little bit of a side benefit that we won't need interest rates as high for as long to get inflation down here at home.
China's economy has long proved resilient, but it will be tested as its population ages and global competition increases.
It's not going to be quite the engine of growth in the coming decade as it has been in past decades.
Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Tragedy after wildfires. Still ahead, the deadly discovery in Greece. The bodies of 18 people have been found in northeastern Greece in an area ravaged by a wildfire. Authorities are investigating whether they were migrants. The fire destroyed a remote village that's on a popular route for asylum seekers from the Middle East and Asia. To escape the flames, dozens of hospital patients were transferred onto a ferry at the port city of Alexandroupolis. Another heat wave has gripped southern Europe, and Greece is dealing with a second bout of deadly blazes in a month. 2 weeks after wildfires whipped through the town of Lahaina on the island of Maui, more than 800 people are still unaccounted for. It is a huge challenge for officials who are trying to determine how many people died and how many have simply not checked in. At least 115 people are known to have died. During a brief visit to Lahaina yesterday, U.S. President Joe Biden promised more federal support and said rebuilding will be led by residents.
We will be respectful of the sacred grounds and the traditions that rebuild the way the people of Maui want to build, not the way others want to build. We're going to rebuild the way the people of Maui want to build. But, you know, it's going to be hard.
Many have criticized the Biden administration's response, including the initial $700 critical needs payment to residents to cover the cost of necessities. Lahaina bore the brunt of the flames there. The historic town was almost completely destroyed, but somehow one house is still standing. The picture of this 100-year-old house is astonishing everyone, including the owners. They were in Massachusetts at the time of the fire. They aren't sure why their wooden home was spared. They say recent renovations may have helped, including adding a metal roof and landscaping with river stones instead of plants. Ravine rescue next, the mission in Pakistan to save people trapped in this dangling cable car. They dangled for hours, hundreds of meters above a ravine in Pakistan. And tonight, all 8 people trapped in a cable car are safe after a slow and dangerous rescue operation. It happened in a remote mountainous region about 200 kilometers north of Islamabad. Crystal Gamansing explains what went wrong and how specially trained military teams pulled off the rescue.
In the mountain villages around Badagram, cable cars are used to turn a 2-hour walk to school into a 4-minute ride. On Tuesday morning, things didn't go as planned. 2 of the 3 cables attached to the car snapped, 8 passengers were left dangling in the air. The Pakistani news channel Geo spoke with one of the individuals precariously stranded. Gulfaraz said, "I don't know how to make a request, but this is a matter of human lives. As you can imagine, the authorities should rescue all of us as soon as possible." He was asked if the cable car was used often and said yes, daily. The interview was cut short. The call dropped. Military helicopters and rescue teams were deployed. About 10 hours into the ordeal, the first air rescue. A student was hoisted out of the cable car, a terrifying trip in its own right. All of the students on board were said to be between the ages of 10 and 16. Pakistan's caretaker prime minister took to social media to applaud the rescue efforts. He also pledged to have all private chairlifts inspected. Rescuers fighting against the wind and losing daylight were forced to call off efforts by air. Zip lines were instead set up and trained civilian teams got involved. In the dark, another face emerged from the ravine. Every passenger eventually found their feet back on solid ground, ending an agonizing day that began with a ride of convenience. Crystal Gamansing, Global News, London.
And that is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is this alpine lake on the outskirts of Carcross, Yukon. We'd love to see your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.